Hi, I'm going to show you how to baste a tumbler. Now, the tumbler is a shape used in English paper piecing. It's one of the many shapes used in English paper piecing. People usually think of hexagons when they think of English paper piecing, but you can use a variety of shapes. This time I'm trying the tumbler shape. This is a 1.5 inch tall tumbler, and it's basted a little bit differently from a hexagon. Once you have basted a bunch of these, then you can start sewing them together edge to edge, and you end up with something that looks like this. You sew them together in rows, and then you can sew the rows together and make a big piece of fabric, basically, that you can use for a quilt top or a wall hanging pillow decoration, whatever. I buy my paper pieces from a company called Paper Pieces. You can buy them in bags that contain, this one has 840 pieces. And I've been really impressed with the quality of their paper pieces. Some people do cut their own. I like that these are already pre-cut. These have been cut exactly to size, and I'm afraid if I cut my own, I might not cut them perfectly. It will throw off the design as you put them together if they're not exactly sized the same. So this is how you baste a tumbler. So the first thing that you do to baste a tumbler is you take your shape and you pin it to the back side of a fabric. And you're going to want to leave about 1/4 inch all the way around as your seam allowance. Pin it in place. I usually pin it kind of diagonally like that. And then cut out your shape, doing the 1/4 inch seam allowance. And it doesn't have to be exact. There we go. Just kind of wonky, but that's all right. It's not perfect. See, it is not perfect, and this does not have to be perfect. So then you're going to use any kind of thread, and I actually use thread that I'm trying to get rid of. I have this whole jar here of thread that I'm trying to get rid of. So it's a good way to use it. Put a knot in the end, and you're going to want to start on the side coming off of the short side. So here's the short side, so this is where we want to start. You're going to start by folding over with your thumb, and a little ways down the piece, you're going to stick the needle in, and you're going to pull it up here. So you're going to have a big stitch on the back when you pull it through. See that? Okay, so now we have come to the first corner. You're going to take the side you haven't folded over yet, you're going to fold it in, and then fold this on top of it. That is going to leave a little flag hanging out like that. Do not worry about the flag because you can just push it out of the way when you're sewing them together. So you're getting close to the end here, so stick your needle in there. It's going to come out. That. Ow. And then I usually come back next to that, just like that. That may be excessive, but that's kind of how I do it. Then we're going to continue by smoothing the back. It's really the front, but smoothing across, bringing it over the edge of the card. I'm going to take a stitch through. I'm going to take another big stitch across this side. Stitch up here. Okay, we've come to another corner. We're going to do it the same way. So take the side you haven't been working on, fold it over by the corner, and then take the side you have been working on and fold it over, and you're going to have another little flag sticking out. So come close to the edge, close to the point, I mean. So come close to the point. Come up again in that same little fold as before. See? And then continue up the next side. Smooth it over. Take a big stitch through the paper. Even though you are stitching through the paper, you can reuse these papers in the future. They'll just have little pinpricks in them. Come on up. See? So now I've got some stitches here on the back. So now we're at the short side, and this is when I usually take my pin out. So here is, you're going to fold it kind of like you fold a hexagon, if you've ever done that before. So you fold in, and then you fold over the top like that. You see how that looks? Again, you just fold it to the edge, and take the top and fold it over, and you've got this nice little tuck or pleat. So then I'm going to put my needle in this side of it. I'm not going through the paper, and I'm going to come up through the part that I folded over. Pull that through, and then I do a second one like that. See it? Okay. Because this is the short side, you don't need a stitch through the paper there. And then we're going to go across. Going to fold it down and then fold it in like that. Go through this one. Remember, you're not going through the paper. Then go through the folded part. It's really hard to sew with the Band-Aid on. Come up. 1, 2. Oops. Sometimes I do a third. That's just me. Yeah. So now you've finished stitching it around. See how it's nice and sharp on these edges? And here's your little flags. They get moved out of the way when you're sewing, so you will not see these later on. So now what I usually do is I take it and I go through, not through the paper, but I just go through the fabric and I bring the thread through just to get it out of the way so I don't have a thread tail sticking out. Doop. And there's your basted tumbler. Ta-da! Now it's time to sew them together. Next time I'll show you how to do that. In case you were wondering, these are actually little leather thimbles. Well, they act like thimbles. They're little stick-on pieces that you can use when sewing, and I usually put mine right there, and I did not have it on. I meant to put it on when I was basting this, but I didn't need to because I was just doing one of them. And it protects your fingers. So for example, here you are sewing, and I can use it to like push it through. I like it because it's pretty inconspicuous. It doesn't get in the way and it works really well. When I do other types of sewing like applique or quilting, I do use a regular thimble. But for this, these work perfectly and they last forever. I also use Thread Magic. This is something that you run your thread through. Most of you probably already know about this. Or something like it, beeswax or Thread Magic. You run it through and it coats it with this kind of like firm Vaseline. I don't know what it's made out of, but it makes it so that the thread doesn't knot up as much when you're sewing repetitively. So again, I didn't use it this time because I was just doing one hexagon. You can find any of this stuff at Joann or Amazon, most sewing stores. It's not difficult to find this stuff.